Who are you?
I have many names. My people call me Khan, but my enemies call me Namor.
That Namor, I would say he obviously was given that name also by someone in the film. Sure. So it's not even something that is from him.
Now Namor, I keep joking. Namor
is over there.
I know we talked to him already.
El niño sin amor. Por eso le dicen Namor.
¿En serio?
El niño que creció sin amor. Namor.
Nerdrotic.com.
New Black Panther Wakanda Forever clips confirm more awful Marvel humor, new Latin pronunciation for Namor's name. We'll get back to that in just a second, but I wanted to focus on the first statement in this article. The more things change, the more they stay the same, and nowhere does that adage apply more than Marvel's upcoming Black Panther Wakanda Forever. I would take it a few steps further. Nowhere does that adage apply more than Disney itself.
Listen, you smell something?
Things are indeed changing thanks partially to the over 588,000 of you maniacs who have decided to join us on this journey to save our culture. Yet stay vigilant, because I firmly believe we are still in the things are going to get worse before they get better stage of this change. Let's focus on the change that we see happening right in front of us. The complete disaster that was the Rings of Power, destroyed by the Tolkien fandom, who Amazon decided to make an enemy of. The first female Doctor played by Jodie Whittaker becoming the last female Doctor played by Jodie Whittaker, regenerating into David Tennant, and it kind of flopped.
What?
Did you know there's a Picard season 3 that's bringing back the entire Next Generation cast? Of course you didn't, because you don't care anymore. Speaking of not caring anymore, I forgot to mention Disney Star Wars, because I don't care anymore, and I guess a lot of people agree with me. Currently, there is a show called Andor that is running right now on Disney+, and according to critics, it's the best Star Wars show in years that no one's watching. But then there's Henry Cavill returning to Superman, and not only returning back to one of the greatest superheroes of all time and doing it right, returning to the optimism and traditional heroism of the Man of Steel.
Right now, I can't really talk about anything. What I do want is hope, optimism, and joy. Those three things are essential for the character.
And of course, this gets followed up with Henry Cavill then leaving The Witcher because they didn't, you can say it with me, respect the lore.
I'm the crazy lore loyalist who's all about the details and probably frustrating the bejesus out of everyone by saying, yeah, but what about this? And what about this bit? But he can do this. And I enjoy that aspect of the storytelling. I enjoy getting into it. I enjoy being that person who's always about the details.
On the other side, there's the more they stay the same, and that brings us to Disney. We got some Wonder Man casting today, those aforementioned Wakanda Forever clips that, again, we'll get to, and Bob Chapek saying Disney isn't woke at all. So some of that change is coming a bit too late, like with Doctor Who and Star Trek. Some of it is coming right on time, possibly with Warner Brothers, and some of it will never come at all because, as I've said before, when it comes to the change party, Disney will be the last to show up if they show up at all. The other thing that isn't going to change, the access media. Tell me if you haven't heard this one before from Variety. Black Panther Wakanda Forever first reactions herald Marvel's most poignant and powerful film. I'm curious to see if we're going to hear the word emotional attached to Wakanda Forever multiple times. Now, before we get to what I'm sure will be fresh piping hot takes from the corporate shill critics, briefly we'll go over what I thought of the character Black Panther. Big fan of the Jack Kirby and much later Christopher Priest runs in the comics. Thought he had a great introduction in Civil War, one of the highlights, and then took a backseat in his own film, which was unfortunate. I think Black Panther was one of the most overrated, above average films of all time and is a product of the greatest marketing campaign of all time. One that we will probably never see the likes of again, but Disney has been trying to reproduce it ever since. They actually manufactured a cultural moment. Part of the reason for this success is the same reason the first Wonder Woman film succeeded. Black Panther wasn't a derivative or race or gender swap character. This was an original character made up through the comics that have been around for years that everyone has read and loved. I also think Black Panther, along with the Wasp and Ant-Man, and yes, I call it the Wasp and Ant-Man, were precursors for things to come with the MCU. And now let's get to the usual suspects and their early reactions to next Marvel product. product. Disney and Marvel, or Disney Marvel, Studios finally unveiled Ryan Coogler's Black Panther Wakanda Forever at the film's world premiere in Hollywood on Wednesday evening. First reactions are emerging online now, and they are overwhelmingly positive. It appears there wasn't a dry eye in the theater during the film's 160-minute runtime. Sweet Christmas. Danny Fernandez, no spoilers, Wakanda Forever had so many emotions. It was creepy and brutal in parts, heartbreaking and beautiful, and the fight scenes were wild. I am in awe of the care put into representing these cultures. Hashtag Wakanda Forever. Drew Taylor, Black Panther Wakanda Forever prioritizes sentiment over spectacle, and for the most part, it's a transporting and engrossing triumph. Arguably Marvel's most deeply felt and emotional resonant extravaganza. Also, Ludwig's score is an all-timer. Wendy Lee Zanny, Wakanda Forever will take you on a roller coaster of emotions. While Chadwick's absence is felt, the cast's performance is phenomenal. The journey and mourning each cast goes through is felt through the film. Tons of action. Namor is fantastic, or Namor. Tessa Smith, Mama's Geeky. Black Panther Wakanda Forever feels like a war movie. It's emotional, heavy, intense, and phenomenal. That word used again. Namor, or Namor, is an incredible and powerful villain. Wakanda Forever focuses on grief, loss, and vengeance. Didn't WandaVision do that? You aren't ready for the Marvel logo and mid-credit. It honors Chadwick perfectly. Then we hear from Perry Nemiroff. Black Panther Wakanda Forever is excellent. An immensely powerful story of forging forward. Shattering at times, but also beautifully cathartic and heartening. Oh, she almost used emotional. Cannot get over how well the film earns that title. This brings us to Steve Weintraub from Collider. I know you don't believe when people come out of a world premiere and say a movie is awesome. Well, there's good reason for that. It probably has something to do with that early access and that little gift bag you sold your integrity for. Black Panther Wakanda Forever is a fantastic sequel and a great movie. I knew it would be emotional, and it was. Expect your eyes to leak. Great job, Ryan Coogler. And just a reminder, this is what Collider's Steve Weintraub thought of the Eternals. My favorite part of Marvel movies is how they consistently manage to find new ways to tell their stories. Eternals is beautifully shot and looks very different than previous MCU films. Story surprised me with some of the twists and turns. The two after the credit scene are fire. Oh, but we're far from done. Fico Congeniano wrote, Coogler delivers a soulful, wondrous sequel that packs an emotional punch and effectively explores relevant world themes. Wakanda Forever is amazing. Coogler delivered an epic and emotional sequel that is an incredible tribute to Chadwick Boseman's legacy. Samuel Leggett Jr. calls it easily the best Marvel film since Avengers Endgame, adding the scope, the camera work, the acting, and the raw emotions on and off screen can be felt throughout. This is the Marvel I've missed. The Josie Marie concluded, it's hard to shake the emotional weight Wakanda Forever carries throughout the entire film. More serious in tone. A wonderful conclusion to Phase 4. It celebrates women as the fiercest protectors of all. Oh, MCU. Black Panther dies, women most affected. In all seriousness, rest in peace, Chadwick Boseman, and I hope this ends up being a tribute with reverence and not exploitive, but that is for the paying customer to decide. As far as the film is concerned, having a director with previous experience doesn't guarantee a good film. Am I right, Sam Raimi? These are Kevin Feige and Victoria Alonso joints, and it doesn't really matter who directs at this point. Now, I was naive enough to think that Disney Marvel might actually try with this one, and then I saw the clips.
Get out of my door. Get out. Do not take another step toward me.
See how they teach the children to treat their guests.
This place is amazing. The air is pristine.
You brought a spear in here. You brought a spear in here.
I like her.
I like you.
You know, I like them better. Our foremothers gave us this spear because it is precise, elegant, and deadly.
A protected land with people that never have to leave, that never have to change who they were. What reason do you have to reveal your secret to the world?
I am not a woman who enjoys repeating herself.
Small girl.
I am going to give you two options. You can come to Wakanda, conscious or unconscious.
You need to be conscious of the way that you look. Walking around here with that ash on your head.
Oh, it's funny.
No.
My people call me Kukungkan, but my enemies call me Namor.
Now, over the last month, I've been asking on Twitter, where is Namor? And we have a definitive answer. Nowhere to be found in this film. This is Namor. It's bad enough that the character doesn't look anything like the one from the comics, and they've completely retconned the origin, but now they can't pronounce the name right. Something is fishy. But we do get one explanation from Victoria Alonso. You might remember her from this.
It's funny that people call it the X-Men. There's a lot of female superheroes in that X-Men group, so I think it's outdated.
Now, Namor, I keep joking. Namor
Namor is over there.
I know we talked to him already.
El niño sin amor. Por eso le dicen Namor.
¿En serio?
El niño que creció sin amor. Namor.
Translation, Namor now means a boy who grew up without love. That is some intersectional bullshit.
Down with the patriarchy.
But it doesn't end there. Producer Nate Moore gives us another explanation.
That Namor, I would say he obviously was given that name also by someone in the film, so it's not even something that is from him. But there's certainly a way that a Spanish speaker or even a Mayan speaker would say Namor versus a way that an English speaker or somebody who's a little bit more Western in slant might say Namor. And we thought that was just interesting.
Created by Bill Everett, Namor is Roman spelled backwards, and his superhero name, the Submariner, is derived from the tale of the ancient mariner, and he is Atlantean, which comes from what some may call a legend, some others may call it a myth, others might call it history wrapped in a myth that originally came from Egyptian priests, then passed on the Solon, and then it ended up in Plato's dialogues, Timaeus and Critias. You want to actually know more about it? Follow Randall Carlson, the man's a legend. Now Atlantis is Talocan, which is an Aztec paradise that was ruled over by a rain deity, and the Submariner is now Kukulkan, or the feathered serpent, which is derived from the Olmec culture, which actually predates the Mayans and was passed on to the Aztecs as Quetzalcoatl, and people were sacrificed to him. Anyway, back to bounding into comics. Moore's explanation along with the clip also reveals the film is changing how Namor receives his name. Instead of receiving his name from his mother, Princess Fen, when he was born, he's now receiving the name from his enemies. A name that means avenging son, not a boy who grew up without love. And we can't have another Disney Marvel product without some woke marketing.
When Ryan decided to really anchor the world of Talocan in Mayan culture and to have Namor be a little bit of the voice of the colonized, it gave him a reason for that arrogance and a reason for that attitude.
Before we allow Disney Marvel to break their arm, patting themselves on the back for being so gosh darn inclusive with all the changes they've made to Namor, because I'm sure they all came from a very genuine place, I have to ask this question. If representation matters, then the motivations for that representation needs to matter as well.
Finally, I could find a more powerful representation of my culture with dignity and respect.
I mentioned something being fishy, and yes, I know that statement is on the nose. Sue me about them not pronouncing Namor correctly. So I hate to burst your bubble, but this sounds more like rights issues than representation. Turns out Prince Namor, the Submariner's rights are still pretty entangled. Now, we're not sure on a lot of this because Kevin Feige has been very silent, but it looks like Universal still has the film distribution rights. But if you change the character just enough, you can circumvent not only Universal, any creatives or their heirs from any compensation. And the glorious corporation can disguise it as representation. Then, of course, there's Riri Williams, who will get a repurposed Iron Man scene in this film.
As we were crafting shots and sequences, thinking about what you'd seen in other Iron Man movies and sort of doing our riff on it was really fun.
For those of you who don't know, everything that's happening in the current MCU already happened in the comic books years ago, and the results will be the same. Riri Williams Ironheart is the poster child for SJW Marvel, also known as the all-new, all-different era that essentially killed Marvel Comics, the one that's currently in hospice today. It's beyond insanity. It's forcing the same things over and over again and demanding different results. Whether this film is good or bad, obviously that has yet to be decided, but based on what I've seen with those clips, I think it's far more likely that Wakanda Forever is going to be yet another forgettable Disney Marvel product and a fitting end to the MCU Phase 4. This brings us to the much bigger picture: Disney and why it's doomed. Like I've said before, Disney didn't start Star Wars, Pixar, or Marvel, but they're sure as hell gonna finish them. From bounding into comics, Bob Chapek, the savior of Disney, denies Disney has become too woke. The company has survived for 100 years by catering to its audience, and it's going to thrive the next 100 by doing the same. First off, Disney has been around for a long time, but it hasn't always thrived. It's been one of the lowest performing stocks in 2022, and it has everything to do with the decisions made by the company and its CEOs, Bob Chapek and his predecessor, Bob Iger. These are what you call consequences. Chapek says, "I think we want Disney to stand for bringing people together, and I think we do that by diverse stories and diverse characters." So to be clear, you don't think Disney is too woke, Murray from the Washington Street Journal then asked, seeking out one last clarification on the topic. "I think Disney is a company that survived for 100 years by catering to its audience, and it's going to thrive for the next 100 years by catering to its audience," affirmed Chapek in turn. The audience that never existed, and what's kept Disney alive is the normies, and they are starting to wake up. So I don't think you're catering to your audience with films like The Marvels or shows like Echo, Agatha Harkness, or on the Disney Star Wars side, The Acolyte, run by former Harvey Weinstein assistant Leslie Headland, or 50 more live-action remakes of 50 animated features. Disney doesn't create anything new and hasn't for a long time. All they do is buy and repurpose, and they're running out of franchises to destroy. And while they didn't create fan baiting, they have perfected it, and it's led to revulsion, rebellion, which will be followed closely by apathy, the franchise killer. So as the winds of change started blowing with Elon Musk buying Twitter, Henry Cavill returning to Superman, this gives people some hope. There's also the change that came a little bit too late, like with Star Trek and Doctor Who. And then there's full-blown apathy, like with Disney Star Wars, and that is exactly where Disney Marvel is headed. And it's clear it's not just a problem with its subsidiaries, it's a Disney problem. And while there are other contributing factors like capital drying up and Disney Marvel and Disney Star Wars basically spamming content, the foundational problem remains, the one that the access media will never admit to. People are sick to death of woke identity politics and being vilified for calling it out. So as we approach Wakanda Forever, there are still going to be a lot of critics who are scared to death to criticize this film and won't. That is what Disney and Hollywood's game plan has been for years, and now that game is over. But I will make one promise: I won't be buying any tickets to Wakanda Forever. If you like what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like what you heard, I thank you for listening this long. I will see you in the next video.
Nerdrotic.com.